The Boston Celtics just took a leisurely stroll through the playoffs and snatched away the Larry O'Brien Trophy. We could go on and on trying to assign the yearly asterisk to this team, but truthfully they deserve to win. They deserve to win because this team was ridiculously good. But they were also pretty unique in the almanac of championship teams, and that's what we're here to talk about. They were unique in the way they were balanced. You see, almost every championship team in NBA history is built in the same kind of way. A handful of solid role players, one or two all-star level guys, and one of the absolute best players in the league. But the Celtics are a little different. Jason Tatum is awesome, but he's not quite the type of consensus top 3 player that has headlined every champion for the last decade. And it's hard to even call his supporting cast a supporting cast, because they're all legit top 50 players. So, if the standard championship team's talent graph looks something like this, well, the Celtics look like this. So I got curious. How does a team like this come to be? And then I did what any marginally sane person would, and I traced every transaction that led to every member of this championship rotation landing on the Celtics. Through trade after trade, year after year, the rabbit hole just got deeper. These 8 champions. Well, this is what it costs to get them. So, what is this mess? This tree is every transaction that leads to the 8 players that made up the Celtics' 2024 core playoff rotation. That might be a little confusing, so let me explain. Every player on a team gets there in one of 3 ways. Either they're signed as a free agent, drafted, or traded for. The first 2 are pretty straightforward. But trades are a little bit different because in order to trade for something, you have to give something up, whether that's a player, draft pick, cash, or some combination of those things. And whatever it is that you gave up, you must have also acquired at some point. If it's cash or one of the 2 draft picks a team gets assigned every year, then that's it. But if it's a player or another team's pick, then the trail goes on. So, this tree starts out from these 8 guys and branches out back in time until it reaches either a free agent signing or an original Celtics draft pick. In total, there are 51 trades here, ranging from completely benign to perhaps the greatest fleece job in NBA history. You may know the one I'm talking about, and we'll get to it in a bit. Through that labyrinth of trades, there are a total of 95 players that at one point were traded towards these 8 guys. Well, technically towards these 6 guys. Somewhat ironically, the only Celtics free agent signing on this team and the only original Celtics draft selection are the 2 least utilized rotation players. And both of those players, Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, were nowhere near huge acquisitions. Hauser, the lone free agent, signed a 2-way contract in 2021 as an undrafted free agent. And Pritchard was just the 26th overall pick by the Celtics in the 2020 draft. The other 6 players that made up the Celtics playoff rotation, Al Horford, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, and Drew Holiday, all arrived to Boston as a result of decades worth of interconnected trades. In 2015, the Celtics drafted Terry Rozier with the 16th pick. 4 years later, they traded him, along with a second-round pick and a sign-and-trade for Kemba Walker. They used Walker along with draft capital to reunite with Al Horford in 2021. And in that deal with OKC, the Celtics also got Moses Brown. A month later, they sent Brown to Dallas for Josh Richardson, and then in 2022 they traded Richardson, 2 first-round picks, and Romeo Langford in order to acquire the services of Derek White from San Antonio. Remember Romeo Langford, we'll get back to him in a sec. That 2023 Celtics team with White and Horford cruised to the conference finals but ran into a white-hot Heat team. So, in the following summer, Boston made 2 more trades to polish off their super team. First, in a 3-team deal with the Wizards and Grizzlies, they sent out a package including their longest tenured player, Marcus Smart, and 3 other guys in exchange for 3 things. The 25th pick in that year's draft, Marcus Sasser, who they immediately traded away for basically nothing, plus a 2024 Warriors first and Kristaps Porzingis. People already talk about this trade a lot, but I can't resist the urge to question how on earth the Celtics not only didn't give up a first-round pick to get Porzingis, but effectively got 2 of them in the deal. Anyways, that's how Tingus Pingus ended up in Boston. It's also part of how they landed Drew Holiday 3 months later, because they traded the 2024 Warriors pick, plus their 2029 first-rounder, Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams to Portland in order to free Holiday from his holding cell. So that's recent history, but let me give you an idea of what one of these branches looks like. Of those 2 players in the Holiday trade, Robert Williams is the straightforward one. He was a Celtics first-round pick from 2018. Brogdon, on the other hand, is where we can start to see how quickly things get complicated. He came to Boston in a trade from Indiana centered around Aaron Nesmith, who the Celtics drafted with a Grizzlies pick they got by trading Jeff Green in 2015, who they got by trading Nate Robinson and Kendrick Perkins, who Boston got in trades in 2010 and 2003, involving players and picks acquired as far back as 2000. Daniel Tice was also in the Brogdon trade, and the Celtics acquired him by trading 3 other players, 2 of which were free agent signings, and the other, Bruno Fernando, they acquired in a separate trade for Tristan Thompson. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's time to talk about that trade. You know the one I'm talking about. Not only is the 2013 trade between the Nets and the Celtics probably the most infamous basketball transaction ever, it's also the foundation for this entire graph of trades. The entire 2024 Celtics starting lineup, White, Holiday, Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis, can all be traced back in one way or another to this trade. So let's talk about it. In the summer of 13, the Nets made a miscalculation. Looking to improve around their core of Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, and Darren Williams, they decided to make a big gamble by trading for Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and DJ White. On paper, it sounded great. All 5 members of their new starting lineup had been All-Stars in one of the 2 previous seasons. Quite like the 2024 Celtics, the roster was lined with a bunch of really good players. But, unlike the Celtics, the team sort of floundered. They had a worse record than the season before and only made it to the second round. And therein lies the miscalculation. Redundant skill sets, injuries, and above all else, age prevented this team from making any significant noise. On the other end, the Celtics made out like bandits. In exchange for their aging superstars, Boston got 5 players, in addition to the Nets' unprotected first-round picks in 2014, 2016, and 2018, and an unprotected first-round pick swap in 2017. The best part of it all? The Nets were so old that by the time 2016 rolled around, they were really bad. This trade had rippling effects for both franchises, but talking about how it destroyed the Nets for like half a decade would be depressing. So let's talk about the Celtics. And let's start with the obvious. The 2016 pick ended up being the 3rd overall selection. And, well, that pick turned into Finals MVP Jaylen Brown. The 2017 pick swap? Well, the Nets won 20 games in 2017 and then won the lottery on behalf of the Celtics, who then traded back in a swap with the 76ers, who used the first pick to take Markelle Fultz. In the swap, the Celtics got 2 Kings first-round picks, the 3rd overall pick in 2017 and a 2019 first-rounder. As you may have guessed, they used the 3rd pick to draft Jason Tatum. Even if they didn't know it at the time, the 2013 Celtics had just turned their two aging superstars, their two best players for the previous 6 seasons, into their two future best players in one fell swoop. There's something poetic about that, the past turned into the future, all at the unfortunate expense of the Brooklyn Nets. But that's not all. I told you that all 5 2024 starters could trace back to this trade. Remember Romeo Langford? That piece of the Derek White trade we skipped? Well, he was the result of that 2019 Kings first round pick. That covers White, but we're gonna have to do a little bit more work to get to Holiday and Porzingis, so bear with me. In 2014, the Celtics traded 2 of the players they got from the Nets deal. Marshawn Brooks, along with Jordan Crawford, went out in a deal that, among other things, gave the Celtics the Heat's 2016 second round pick, which they used to draft Deonta Davis. And Keith Bogans was traded for Dwight Powell, who was packaged with Rajon Rondo in a trade with Dallas. Part of the return of that trade was Brandon Wright, who was later traded for Rade Zagorac. Then, the Celtics traded Davis and Zagorac to the Grizzlies for a Clippers first round pick. That Clippers pick turned into Matisse Thybulle, who turned into Ty Jerome, who was part of a package with Aaron Baines that brought back a Bucks first rounder. That pick, who ended up being Desmond Bane, was traded with Enes Freedom, aka Enes Kanter, for a couple of second round picks, one of which was used to trade for Mike Muscala, who was eventually traded in the Kristaps Porzingis deal, which, as you'll remember, also leads to the Holiday trade. In summary, that 2013 Nets trade led directly to the Celtics drafting Jaylen Brown, a little less directly to them drafting Jason Tatum, and indirectly led to them trading for Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, and Drew Holiday. At this point, we've covered everything back to 2013, but this lineage of transactions goes back way, way further. In fact, you can trace bits and pieces of this championship team back to the year 1990. And the gateway to that past is another one of the more famous trades of NBA history. In the mid-2000s, the Celtics assembled a Death Star when they traded for Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett. Allen infamously took his talents to South Beach as a free agent, so he's not represented on this graph, but Garnett was part of the Nets trade, so he is. So let's revisit how he got to Boston in the first place. In 2007, the Celtics traded 5 players, their 2009 first round pick, and Minnesota's own 2009 first rounder for Garnett. 2 of those players, Al Jefferson and Gerald Green, were direct Celtics first rounders from 2004 and 2005. But the other 3 and that Minnesota pick, well, those came to Boston like this. I won't bore you with the nitty-gritty details of all of these trades, but let me show you some highlights. Some notable names we'll find down this path include Chauncey Billups, Gary Payton, Joe Johnson, Dana Barros, Tom Gugliotta, and Antoine Walker, who is actually here twice after the Celtics traded for a Mavericks pick, used it to draft him, traded him away, traded for him, and then traded him away again. The longest branch on here comes in the form of the Celtics' 1990 first-round pick, Dee Brown, who through 3 intermediate trades ended up as part of the package for that Minnesota pick. The Celtics' 1994 and 1995 first-round selections are here also, in the form of 2 Erics, Montross and Williams. Actually, with just one exception, every single Celtics first-round pick from 1994 to 2006 eventually leads into the Kevin Garnett trade. That exception is the 1998 Celtics pick used to draft Paul Pierce. And on a quick tangent, it's quite funny to me how these 2 central figures of 21st century Celtics basketball ended up here in such different ways. One guy cost the Celtics a single well-executed first-round pick, and the other, albeit in a massively reductive view of things, cost them 13. We've already covered how this tree contains over 50 trades and nearly 100 different players. But here are some more stats about this ridiculous tangled mess of managerial competence. In total, the Celtics used 26 of their own first-round picks towards this 8-man rotation, by either using them to draft players or trading them. The earliest, that 1990 pick used to draft D. Brown, is from 34 years before the Celtics hoisted the Larry O'Brien Trophy in 2024. And on the other end of the timeline is the Celtics' 2029 first-rounder from 5 years in the future. Put it all together and you have a span of 40 years in which the Celtics utilized 2/3 of their first-round picks in some way towards assembling this roster. They also used 10 of their second-round picks ranging from 1998 to 2029, for a total of 36 original Celtics picks. Contrast that against only 26 mostly innocuous free agent signings. And to me, that's significant, because it means that Boston hasn't, at least for the last 35 years, ever really relied on attracting huge name free agents to sign with them. Instead, they've drafted well, recognized value where other teams haven't, and most crucially, maximize the value of their players by trading them at exactly the right moments. That's what sets them apart. I mean, think about other recent contending teams. Superstars like Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and LeBron James all left championship rosters for pennies on the dollar or no return at all. Other highly productive players like Kyle Lowry and Jordan Poole saw their value diminish significantly before their teams decided to move on. And in so many cases, GMs have just mishandled roster decisions while trying to preserve or improve high-end teams. Think about the Lakers letting Alex Caruso walk, or the 76ers paying Tobias Harris instead of Jimmy Butler. Danny Ainge and Celtics management had a similar predicament in the early 2010s, coming off a championship in 2008 but with an aging roster and stagnant progress. That 2008 championship team had a starting lineup of Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Kendrick Perkins. Those names might sound familiar, and not just because they were mostly all massive stars, but also because 4 of those 5 players are on this tree. Other than Ray Allen, Boston recycled their entire starting lineup towards another championship roster 16 years later. And that's really what this whole exercise is all about. Sure, there were plenty of mistakes along the way. I mean, the Celtics effectively gave up on Chauncey Billups only to see him turn into a Finals MVP. But on the whole, the Celtics executed trades from the seemingly meaningless to the paradigm shifters in order to get the most out of the scarce resources afforded to them through draft picks and free agency. It is, in my humble opinion, the most impressive run of consistent and exceptional management the league has seen in a long time.